Hey, Mike Colthorpe again here. I want to talk a little bit about public pensions. Now, this is kind of a touchy subject because I know a lot of people have public pensions, and you may have one as well. So I want to make sure that it's really clear that I'm not bashing public employees who receive pensions. I'm not bashing the government entities that have them. But what I want you to understand is this is a difficult subject to talk about because if you are a government employee and you have a public pension, you have to understand, you probably already know this, but the public pensions all over the country are really in dire straits financially. They are struggling financially. They are at risk. We've already had many states and cities and counties within the United States in the last 30 years that have filed bankruptcy to relieve them of the responsibility financially of these public pensions. Specifically, there is a water district down in Southern California, and I think it's as early as 2018, where they decided they could not afford to pay for the pension, and they got a hold of PERS and basically said, hey, we're not paying anymore. And PERS said, okay, we're going to have a board meeting. They had a board meeting. The board said, okay, well, they don't want to pay anymore. Okay, we're going to cut their pensions in half. Done. Okay. So they wrote the letters and sent them out. You know, when you're retired and you're in a public pension system, whether it's Sac County, LA County, Contra Costa County, a lot of cities and counties have their own pensions if they're big enough, right? But if you're in a public pension, whether it's CalPERS, one of the largest public pension systems in the world, or LA County, which is pretty big, Contra Costa County is pretty big, Sac County is a decent size. So you have all these counties and cities that have their own. But if it's a public pension, there's three things. There's three ways they make money. One, from your contribution, the employee, right? Two, the employer contribution. And three, actually four, I guess. Three would be the investments that the fund does, okay? And the fourth one is the public, right? That's through the taxes. So the taxes that the public pay contribute to your pension. Now, what does that mean to you? Well, that means to you that if you're retired, you're then paying the taxes that pay for your pension. Okay? So if the taxes go up, because I'd probably say 100% of the public pension systems overpromise what they can actually afford to give you. Now, that's not your problem. Well, it's not your fault. It's your problem. It's not your fault because you're the one that's going to be on the receiving end. See, when you're retired, you don't have a union that's going to protect you. There are no negotiations for your wages anymore to where you can negotiate the contributions. Okay. Now, when I was in law enforcement, it's been 7 years since I left. They were telling us that we were going to pay up to 25% of our pay, our salary, toward our pensions because of the way the pension system is going. Okay. Now, when I left, I was paying 10% out of my paycheck. So what happens is if the fund doesn't make enough money to pay your pension while you're retired, something has to be done because money has to come in. If there's not enough workers contributing to the pension, and that's happening right now because, see, your pension calculations, my pension was 3% at 50, okay? So the way that worked is that my contribution was calibrated according to what I was going to get, right? 90% of my salary the rest of my life. Now, all the new guys that came in, 15 years after I started law enforcement, they started changing the contribution levels. And of course, there's varying contribution levels and distribution levels depending on what you did. Law enforcement's different than janitors, and they're different than people who work in the office. So there's just different strategy or calculations, okay? Ratios is the word I'm thinking of, different ratios. So if you have, let's just say law enforcement, right? All the guys that are 350, my age, they're all starting to retire, okay? And so all the people that had my type of retirement program, they're all retired now, taking all their money, which they deserve, okay? But But the problem is all the people that are working are coming in at different ratios, which means they're not contributing as much as you were contributing, and they may not be making as much money as you were making. Now, that can cause a problem because, see, a pension system is designed to be continuously flowing with money. And so you have to be putting money into this pension system, whether it's through taxes, whether it's through growth in the investment strategies that they do, your contributions, the department or the city and county and state's contributions, right? We know California, the state of California is billions of dollars behind on their payments to CalPERS, right? How are they going to pay that back? Well, they're going to raise taxes. And by the way, Gavin Newsom just raised business taxes 18%, as if we're not losing enough businesses, right? So we have businesses that are leaving the state, the very large businesses that are providing us with great revenues. Let's go ahead and encourage them to leave more, right? And so what's going to happen when those other businesses that they just increase the taxes on start leaving? Well, who's going to pay the taxes for your pension? Well, they're reducing their options. So what happens if they have less taxpayers to put money into it? One, they're going to have to raise the taxes. Two, they're going to have to increase your contributions. But if you're retired, well, you're going to pay the taxes then. Okay, so that's going to come out of your check. Now, I'm not talking about state taxes, because if you leave the state, the smart people that I know that left with CalPERS, they end up leaving the state and they're doing okay. But and they go to a state that doesn't pay state income tax, right? But you still have to pay the federal income tax. And if those taxes go up because the federal pensions, right, that you're not even getting, you're going to pay. So it's going to affect you. So if you're taking a pension, you are going to be a victim eventually, because there's going to be a time where the money's only going to be so much because there's only so many workers. Like, see, the baby boomer years, the baby boomer workers is the largest workforce ever in this country. Baby boomers' kids didn't have as many kids as their parents did. Their kids didn't have as many kids as their parents did. And today, you're lucky to find a kid that wants to get married, let alone have kids, right? And so you have to think about the workforce. By the time you're in your 80s and 90s, who's going to fund your pension? What if your pension goes down when you're in those later years and you're stuck in a home where you need medical payments? Because, you still have to pay for medical. I mean, even if you got medical benefits from your employer, there's still going to be some fees and costs that are come along with that, because if you don't have long-term care expenses, your medical doesn't pay for long-term care homes. So there's all these things that come into play. So what if all this stuff is really happening to you, and the pension system says, you know what, we can't afford to keep paying you, so we're going to have to cut it, right? It's already happened. So can it happen again? Well, it's very likely that it's going to happen again. Or what if the organization you worked for, what if they file bankruptcy, right? It happened in Stockton, happened in Vallejo, happened in San Bernardino County, right? They all file bankruptcy. And whenever you file bankruptcy as a government entity, it's mostly because of the expenses or the unpaid liabilities, typically with a pension. So it's one of those things where, there's not really a good solution, because I can't do anything about it, but you can plan your retirement so that you don't depend on your pension so much, that you'll be able to make sure that financially you'll be fine no matter what. So if this is something that concerns you, give me a call. If you know my number, click below. If we haven't talked yet, to get you on the calendar. And if we're in between appointments, we can talk about this at our next meeting. I hope this was helpful.